Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Financial Tides. I'm Taylor Perillo, Certified Financial Planner, your host today, and my co-host John Perillo, Certified Financial Planner, is here as well. Today, we're going to be talking about involving your family in your estate plans and kind of why we typically make that recommendation and why it makes sense, even though it's kind of counterintuitive to what conventional wisdom is. So take us away, John.
Yeah, so through the previous stages of your life, you might have been cryptic about your finances with the kids for various reasons. You know, um, One of my favorite stories is Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq's kid came home from a friend's house and said, "Wow, Dad, we're rich." And Barkley said, "No, we're not rich. I'm rich." He said, "You got to go to stay in school." But more importantly, the message is that as you get later in life, on in life, and your kids are all emancipated adults and approaching senior citizenship themselves, they should know about your finances, both the financial side and then there's the physical side of your estate plan, which Taylor's going to cover in a few minutes. So state your values to them and cover the financials with them. And I'll go over that a little more later on the financials.
Yeah, and I think we're uniquely qualified here, the pair of us, to talk about this with me being John's son and just able to kind of know where his financials stand and knowing that they're separate from our financials. And I think from a very young age, I think that we really started talking about financials, and it's not necessarily just the money aspect of it. I think from a very young age, and mainly because our education system probably doesn't do a great job. Not probably, they don't, unless there's certain select schools out there of actual teaching personal finance and about the financials. So from a very young age, we've had a relationship where I was constantly learning about financials and the finances and what it looks like to handle your own budgeting and your own income, and just kind of setting that all up. So I think that that kind of puts my perspective different and kind of is why I ended up probably in the financial planning space as well, is because I had that background from a very, very young age. So I think that's one thing, is that I know John mentioned that, hey, at a certain age, once you're emancipated, no, start young. You don't have to get into the meat and potatoes of it and go down to every penny and the nitty gritty. It's just start talking about some of the financial stuff you learned over your life and sharing that from a very, very young age so that your kids make up for the lack of financial education they're going to get from the school system. So, and
Yeah.
I think being honest with your family about what you have outstanding is also kind of a big deal. You don't want people to later on be trying to figure out what debts you have, and figuring all that out after the fact is a lot harder because you have to rely on getting letters or finding out something. And a lot of times when settling in a state, those things come up after you think you're all done rather than knowing about it ahead of time. So it's easy to deal with in one fell swoop.
Yeah, and I think it's important that you have an organized list of institutions. A lot of clients over the years have said, well, I have every account listed and every phone number for every account. And that's really not necessary. If you bank at Wells Fargo, your account numbers may change as you switch from joint to trust or TOD accounts. So as long as you have Wells Fargo on the list, when the heirs go down to Wells Fargo is going to find all the accounts. If someone calls us and says, my parent passed and they had your name listed here, we're going to be able to find out all the accounts. In fact, our notes are probably going to have a lot of their banking and insurance information in our notes that we've gathered over the years. So we'll say, don't forget to call Prudential. He mentioned a Prudential life policy. I know he banked at Wells Fargo. That's where we sent the monthly deposits from his investments. So that institution list is key. It makes things easier. And then if you're holding any investments that you specifically have a desire to have an outcome for, you need to share that in writing somewhere. Leave it in writing. Maybe speak about it beforehand, but have a reminder in writing that, hey, I want this to go to the grandkids, as it is, and if they want to sell it, they can. But I want them to have my XYZ shares. We use XYZ because there's no such company, and if we mention a company name, it won't get approved for a broadcast on the podcast. So I say grandkids are going to get XYZ, and the kids are going to get ABC. Okay.
Yeah, and I think the next part of it is just really making sure that your wishes are known to your children. I'm going to get into the details about putting it in writing and why that's important for the purpose of clarity. But for this part of it, I think making sure every relevant party, your children, anyone that's involved in it or not even not involved in it, who thinks they might be involved in it, should be made aware in your lifetime, just so that there's less fighting, less confusion, less unsure of futures for everyone involved. Because you don't want to get to the point where after you pass, everyone's trying to sort things and siblings are coming after other siblings because something was written in the will and they don't feel like that was true, and something was written in a trust and they said that dad would never write that. What did you do? And just create more problems after the fact than during, where I know it's might be a hard conversation to have about why you put a provision in a trust or set something up a current way, but it gets a lot less confusion during your lifetime than trying to figure it out afterwards, and it creates a lot of resentment afterwards within the surviving heirs a lot of the time because it wasn't actually communicated on the front end. So some of the big things, even during the lifetime, to make family aware of, and I'll let John take some more of these, but the first one is any illnesses, conditions, medical symptoms that you've had, so that they can be aware of what might or might not be coming down the pipeline for you, so they can plan accordingly with you.
Yeah, and there's about six more, but three key ones that I have written down were, do you have any specific wishes about your desired end that you need your family or caregivers to know about? And then, do you know what systems, services, and support are available to you and your family at this time? So, a lot of families will have will get Meals on Wheels for a relative or something like that. So those things are available out there, and you have to be proactive about it. And also has a plan been drawn up and steps taken to ensure the plan will be properly enacted? And that's the legal side of it, right? The lawyers and the power of attorney, and those are important things to have, because a power of attorney is fine, if you get it ahead of time, but you can't get a power of attorney if you're, when you need one, right? If you don't have a power of attorney in place, you get sick or incapacitated, you can't go get one. The person has to sign that power of attorney when they're a right stage in mind. Otherwise, you have to get a conservatorship from a court system if it's too late already. So
Yeah, and this goes back to the actually having everything down in writing, so that way your wishes are actually being met. We see far too often that it's not in writing, and a lot of people, the first step is, oh, I'll get the estate plan all drawn up because it'll save me in probate taxes. That's great. It does save in probate taxes in a lot of cases, but the main reason is just to make sure that everything is laid out exactly how you want it to be, so you're not leaving the people that are gonna be there making the decisions if something come up to make the decisions guessing what you may or may not have wanted done in situations like terminal illness, whether you're trying to pursue an aggressive cure or treatment to prolong life and having some life-saving interventions, or just kind of want to let it take you naturally. I think things like that are important to have in writing, so that way no one is actually stuck with the burden of making that decision for you. Just decisions of actual care and what level of care you would want to receive, or comfort, being in the comfort of your own home. And just any wishes that you would desire, just making sure that they're laid out and they're very clear, providing the clarity of what you want to happen, not leaving it to heirs and family members to try to guess for you.
yeah, and it's a stage of life where you don't want a lot of uncertainty, right? So the IRA account with us or at Wells Fargo Bank or anywhere will that'll have a defined 25% here, 25% there. Where we see a lot of the issues with the trinkets around the house, right? Like, what happened to the brass, lantern? Oh, I took that to Goodwill. Why'd you do that? Mom promised me that lantern. It was, things like that. So you should make sure you go through your possessions and jewelry and things like that and say, this is earmarked for this person, that person. Make a list. Who you want to have what, because that's where the nitty gritty comes up. Again, the accounts that are in writing all have assigned beneficiaries. The will assigns that, where the trust assigns how the house is split. But the crystal glasses in the cabinet aren't on that list. So that's important that you do that. And if charity is going to get some of that stuff, that's great too, because then you can put which charity and not have kids guess, is it Goodwill, is it American Red Cross, etc.
Yeah, so I think just to kind of sum all of this up, break it down in a couple sentences, the ultimate goal we're trying to achieve here with all of this is the highest level of clarity. And the ultimate way to get the highest level of clarity is having everything written down, having it legalized so that it's not just a document that you find in the top of the junk drawer when you pass. Have it taken to an attorney, witness, dated, authenticated, so it's fully legal document that's binding. And then making sure that it's fully communicated to all those involved or all those who think that they might be involved, so that there's a full level of clarity and no confusion of what's going to happen if and when that eventuality becomes a reality. And I know it's morbid, but it's something that happens to everyone at one point in time or another. So being organized makes it a lot easier on the families. We see way too often that the lack of organization over the years creates more problems, and it's just not the way that we want anyone to be remembered. Is I wish that this would have been set up more clearly for us.
Yep, and I'll close my part with the getting professional guidance is important. I look at my personal estate, and we've got both the financial and the physical side split between two different people. So I'm blessed to have a business partner, half owner of the firm, as a CFP and son that will handle the financial side, whether my wife is around or even after she's gone, assuming I'm gone first. That's how it works. But his sister, a nurse practitioner at the Mayo Clinic, will handle the physical side. She's going to make that medical decision. Medical professionals are important to an estate plan. You got to have somebody who's realistic or knowledgeable, to take care of the medical power of attorney. That healthcare proxy part. I want her involved in that because she'll know whether it's end of lifetime or not, and be able to communicate that really well to her brothers. So anyway, that's my closing thoughts. And Taylor, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, and shameless plug here at the end of this. And I think of all the professionals, the financial professional like ourselves is very important, because us as certified financial planners, we're involved in a lot more than just assets and what you own. From an asset standpoint, we are well aware of estate situation. We're well aware of tax situations, and we like to be the quarterback and kind of that center point, the center of the spokes in the wheel, that we can kind of be a liaison between you and all the other points of contacts, including your family members that are involved in this. So that way it can be it can be an efficient process, and things aren't getting hung up and delayed because communication is breaking down between the different parties, and there are quite a few parties that are involved. So we typically recommend doing a family meeting at some point in time. The sooner you're willing to do that, the better. Bring in the family members that are involved. We can be a trusted contact that kind of helps break it down to them. If there's fears of things like entitlement because they're aware of the assets, we always can have the conversation that mom and dad have worked hard for this money, like Charles Barkley said, and this is their money and they're going to spend it down in their retirement, and you need to continue to work hard and plan for nothing to be there. And basically tell them essentially that if there's anything left, yes, they will get it, but don't plan on it. It's all kind of found money. And I think it also kind of sets them up to have the conversations with us when their financial questions come up and they're seeking more financial education, that they feel like, hey, I remember sitting down and talking with John and Taylor about mom and dad's estate, and I have a question for myself about finances now that they can probably help me with. So just something to consider. If you haven't had that family conversation yet, we encourage you to do so. We're happy to be a part of it, and feel free to reach out. And until next time, thanks for watching Financial Tides.
Thanks, everybody.
John Perillo and Taylor Perillo are financial advisors offering securities through Cetera Advisors LLC, a registered broker-dealer, doing insurance business in California as CFGA Insurance Agency LLC, Member FINRA/SIPC advisory services offered through Cetera Investment Advisors LLC, a registered investment advisor. Cetera firms are under separate ownerships from any other named entity. California insurance licenses number 0F60123 and 0M90666, 6265 Greenwich Drive, Suite 251, San Diego, California 92122. The views depicted in this material are for information purposes only and are not necessarily those of Cetera Advisors LLC. They should not be considered specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Neither Cetera Advisors LLC nor any of its representatives may give legal or tax advice.